On the night of the 12th, rolling into the early morning of the 13th of December, 2025, at 3:17 a.m., the Odessa Regional Air Defense screen lit up with 3 layers of targets at once. Shahed drones skimming low over the sea, Kh-22 missiles at high speed, and Kh-31 missiles driving straight into radar-sensitive zones. The coastal corridor was split apart, the reaction window shrinking by the second. The problem was not whether they could shoot, the problem was when. Fire too early, and the system would burn its own missiles into noise. Hesitate, and the high-speed strike would punch straight into the port's core. And in the moment when every reflex pointed toward a mistake, Ukraine chose the opposite. Do not fire. Lock the corridor first. Keep the missiles for the real strike. That night, Odessa wagered everything on holding the rhythm. Around 2:20 a.m., the Odessa port area was no longer viewed as a city. In the operations room, it was compressed into a few nodes that were not allowed to fail. Power for the piers and cranes, fuel for night operations, and the rail gate through which the container flow had to pass. The duty officers shifted the priority rule to a single line. Keep missiles for high-speed targets. Just one node breaking, and the rhythm would collapse in a chain beyond saving. Russia struck directly at that point. The Shaheds were not meant to destroy, but to pull early firing reflexes and consume processing time. Once air defense was drawn away from the core, the Kh-31 would force radars and cueing stations to change rhythm at the exact moment they were not allowed to change. And it only took one misaligned priority for the Kh-22, fast and heavy, to pass straight through a slice of sky no one was holding anymore. Ukraine understood that risk clearly, but they did not choose the safer path. The order was kept brutally short. Lock the corridor first, switch tracking channels, keep the missiles in hand. The low sky could get dirty. Some targets might penetrate deeper than usual, but the SAMs were not to leave the shoulder. That night, the sky did not belong to the side that fired more. It belonged to the side that endured waiting one beat longer. At 3:17 a.m., within a single update cycle, target density in front of Odessa spiked abruptly. 20 to 30 Shaheds appeared at low altitude, hugging the water, forming an approach corridor and then splitting. One branch clung to the shoreline to drag the tracking load of low-tier sensors, while the other swung wide, creating a dual approach geometry and forcing the system to divide its processing channels. This phase was not meant to cause immediate damage. It was meant to eat time and force priorities. Early engagement with expensive layers would drain tracking channels and missiles on cheap targets. Delay would allow the low-altitude tracks to thicken, narrowing the reaction window for the high-speed phase. Any deviation, if it happened, would not be measured in minutes, but in a few tens of seconds, cut out of the decision cycle. Ukrainian C2 held the pre-locked plan. Firepower was not drawn outward. Shahed raised a curtain on the outer ring, forcing UAVs through a narrow gate in direction and altitude, accepting a dirtier low layer to reduce the load on the main tracking channels. Nasemas and Iris-T remained in a waiting state, reserving channels for high-speed targets not yet revealed. On the screen, low-altitude tracks began to fragment and drift off the optimal corridor. The main tracking channels were still empty. Immediately after, a new cluster of tracks appeared with step-up speed and climbing altitude, the sign that the high-speed approach phase had begun. At 3:23 a.m., the sky in front of Odessa changed character within a single update cycle. The low-level Shahed tracks were still scattered, not yet fully cleared. Then another group pushed in, immediately taking over the system's processing focus. These were Kh-22 missiles, appearing at medium altitude, high speed, flying straight toward the port area. Not many, just a few, but enough to force the entire air defense network to look up. The Kh-22 did not hold a stable profile. It performed a short loft and then dove, changing altitude right in the middle of its approach phase. On the screen, the tracking lines were no longer smooth. Tracks broke at the exact moment the reaction window was shrinking. Committing to a firing decision grew harder by the second, not because of a lack of firepower, but because time itself was being compressed. At that exact moment, the Kh-31 appeared. No circling, no search for ground targets. They drove straight into radar and cueing sensitive zones, forcing the system to change rhythm just to keep the picture intact. The purpose was unmistakable: to create a thin gap in situational awareness, even if only for a few tens of seconds. Only afterward was the scale of this phase confirmed, or roughly 3 to 6 missiles, arriving almost simultaneously. The danger at this point was not whether they could shoot. The danger was a slip in tracking channels and a 1-beat delay in firing. If a radar or cueing station had to reshuffle tracking sources or switch emission modes even briefly, the system would open up an empty beat, and inside that beat, the K-22 would benefit. On the screen, the signs were clear. One tracking channel was pulled toward a sensitive direction. Prediction lines on several tracks wavered, stretched, then snapped back with each update cycle. At 3:24 a.m., the near-break moment arrived. One K-22 track pushed deeper than the planned safety threshold, not because the system failed to see it, but because priority was being forced out of alignment between maintaining high-speed tracking and resisting K-31 rhythm pressure. On the feed, that track showed a brief wobble, a momentary loss during the dive transition, then reacquired. Had the decision come even 1 beat later, the reaction window would have closed completely. At the same time, at low altitude, several targets continued to penetrate deeper than usual. Shahed was straining to hold the outer layer, accepting a dirtier low sky for several minutes. This was a cost calculated in advance. Ukrainian C-2 did not react on the instinct to fire just to be safe. They shortened the cycle exactly where it needed to be cut. The firing threshold for high-speed targets was lowered in a controlled manner, committing 1 step earlier to claw back time. NASAMS clamped down on the K-22 approach corridors, holding high-speed tracks inside a priority stream. IRIS-T covered the mid to low layer and sharply maneuvering targets. Shahed continued to raise the curtain, refusing to pull SAMs down to deal with noise. Radars and cueing stations did not shut down. Tracking sources were rotated in rhythm, enough to keep a continuous picture and deny the K-31 the precise gap it sought. At 3:25 a.m., the payoff began to show in system state. A K-22 track that had crossed the threshold was pulled back into the correct corridor. Prediction lines shortened. Tracking channels were returned to their proper roles. At low altitude, a few tracks still dirtied the inner ring, a calculated price, paid to avoid losing the high-speed picture. The K-31 continued to pressure sensitive zones, but it failed to blind the air defense network. It forced the system to run faster, not to go silent. Phase 3. B ended not in calm, but in a rhythm held just barely long enough. From this point on, deviation would no longer be measured in the number of targets, but in points of penetration. At 3:29 a.m., the sky over Odessa was no longer as dense as it had been minutes earlier. The noise had been pressed down, and in that relative gap, the final phase began. No longer wide area saturation, no longer reflex probing. Fewer new tracks appeared, but their flight paths were clean, straight, and deliberate. They were not trying to collapse the entire system. They were looking for the one place where a single penetration would be enough to throw the port off rhythm. On the fused display, approach vectors gradually took shape. Some held an unusually stable profile, flying straight toward the piers and docks, where cutting power to cranes and coordination would trigger cascading effects. In another direction, several tracks dropped lower, slipping under the mid-layer, pushing toward fuel tanks and pumping stations, seeking an impact close enough to force safety procedures to activate. Slightly farther out, one trajectory cut across toward the railgate and container aggregation point. No need for major destruction, only a blockage at the right moment. This was the phase where numbers no longer mattered. After 3B, the system was thin. There were no spare missiles for testing, no tracking channels left for a wrong handoff. A single well-placed penetration now carried more weight than any interception statistic. Ukrainian C-2 recognized the shift almost immediately. The geometry on the screen was no longer dispersed. It collapsed inward, compressing toward the core. The system changed state, from anti-saturation to area lock. Firepower was not dragged by targets. Instead, corridors leading into key nodes were tightened, each layer held strictly to its role. In one brief moment, a track pressed close enough to the fuel area that the operating crew had to trigger safety procedures. If the picture had been held for one more beat, it could have crossed the threshold for operational impact. But it did not. The tracking channel was locked back in time. The target was bent out of the approach corridor before reaching dangerous conditions. At the railgate axis, another track was intercepted early, forced to change angle and lose the straightness required to create a real blockage. Kh-31 missiles still appeared sporadically in sensitive zones, continuing to force the system to work fast. But after the previous phase, radars and queuing stations were more stable. Tracking sources rotated smoothly. The pressure increased processing tempo. It did not break priority. At 3:33 a.m., the remaining tracks were either cleared from the target airspace or pushed away from key nodes. There was no decisive hit. No node collapsed in sequence. On the screen, corridors into the core gradually cleared, leaving a sky that had just spent several minutes at the edge. The final phase ended not with a large explosion, but with the absence of what should have happened. Key nodes stayed lit. Flow continued, slower but unbroken. The final strike passed through, and that night, there was no point of penetration. As the sky began to pale in the east, reconnaissance UAVs orbited over the port area. Odessa did not present itself as a field of ruins. It appeared as a system that had just been load compressed and then returned to rhythm. Vehicle flow still moved, but in clusters. Rail flow remained open, but with short compression segments. The rhythm did not break, it was only squeezed. Some localized damage was recorded in the berth area, and there were reports of civilian ships being affected within the port complex. At the berths and docks, the main power supply still held at a minimum state. However, part of the load had been shifted to backup generators. In observation imagery, localized blackouts appeared along a few dock rows, not a full outage, but an active load-shedding decision to maintain stability. Cranes were still operating, but the lift cycles were slower than usual. At the fuel tank farm and pumping stations, safety procedures were activated during the tightest stretch of the final phase. There were no signs of major fires or cascading explosions, but the state change caused several refueling lines to pause briefly. On the ground, tanker trucks and support equipment waited in clusters, then gradually dispersed as the rhythm was pulled back. At the railgate and the container aggregation point, the impact was most visible in terms of rhythm. In the early morning, automated dispatching was switched over to manual regulation to handle compressed flows. Some runs were held back for a few tens of minutes to clear the knot, instead of being allowed to surge through. The flow slowed by the hour, not stretched across days. Operational indicators show that the clearest disruption lay in the 1 to 3 hours after the strike. In that window, operating capacity was estimated to drop to roughly 70 to 85%, depending on area and route. No point fell into a fully shut down state. No node triggered a cascading effect. On the air defense side, the price also appeared exactly as accepted in advance. The low layer was dirtier for a few minutes. Shahed had to carry a heavy load, and a few targets penetrated deeper than usual before being dealt with. In exchange, the high-speed layer did not lose the picture, and the key anchor points were not struck in the right place to produce operational impact. On the consolidated map, the strike ended without a single true breakpoint. That night, Odessa was not protected by how many targets were shot down. It was protected by not letting a single target touch the right place. Russia did not lack means, and it did not lack attack layers. What it lacked was a moment of misaligned priority deep enough to turn pressure into operational impact. Ukraine won not because its air defense was stronger in numbers, but because it held rhythm when the system was pressed to the threshold. It accepted a dirtier low sky for a few minutes, accepted the load being pushed onto Shahed in exchange for not losing the high-speed picture and not opening a gap at the exact point. Every decision served a single aim: do not allow a point of penetration to appear. In modern war, results are no longer measured by the number of targets destroyed, but by the state of the system after the strike. When an attack designed to paralyze a seaport produces only short-term disruption, the conclusion is clear. A powerful strike can still lose to rhythm. And that night, the rhythm held.